I think so. We're talking comprehensible input. And Cameron, you ran it last time, right?
Yes.
Okay. And did that go smoothly?
Yeah. And I don't have my paper with my notes.
Heidi sent me a Google Doc.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, we actually talked about uh, some of the issues that impede comprehensible input, like
Okay.
uh, like when you're told you have to follow a book or you have to do this or that. You know,
Yeah.
it can be really difficult.
Okay. So most of you guys focus on other ways to get around them, or just reasons that
Yeah,
people don't do it?
well, in I think Heidi's case, she was talking about that she was being told, you know, they have to take this particular test. They have to you need to cover all of this material. They have to know all of this vocabulary by this date. And this, you know, it was ridiculous. And you know, we kind of told her, you know, you should now you've had your first year, you can kind of move on and say, you know, maybe I'm going to hit these themes, but I'm going to do it my way. And because it was just too much. She couldn't get the comprehensible input in because she was just dumping so much onto the students,
Mm-hmm.
and the tests were just how the tests are that come with the book series.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah,
I thought you were
so
talking about like TPRS books, and I was like, oh,
no,
that's not nearly as bad.
no. Yeah, she
They weren't bad.
talking about the grammar tests.
Yeah. Those would be pretty much everything.
Yeah.
All right. So okay. So I stole Heidi's notes, so I can paste this in there for you. Putting it in the chat. I copied and pasted them into a new notes page, so you can see those. Just talked
Okay.
about what it was, what the challenges were, um, how to make these comprehensible, and you guys talked about TPRS, assessing students, and formative and summative, and then what do we do with the restrictive schools? Okay, so that's what you're talking about. All right, so that's the notes from last time, and we can add stuff to that. I was thinking maybe at the top for anything that we come up with today. All right. So, Beth or Kim, do either of you have any like formal training with TCI or TPRS or any of the comprehensible input programs?
Yes, I've been trained in TPRS. I've been to several workshops and um, even here in Japan. So I was
Oh,
lucky.
neat.
Yeah, I think it was Susan Gross. She came her last year, last 2 years of before she retired, and that was nice.
Okay. So Susan Gross
I
is
have not.
retired. Okay. You have no training with it, Beth?
No, nothing. I wanted to go to training this summer, but it was a little pricey. I need to save up for it maybe for next year if they have it in Nebraska.
Right. Yeah. Were you gonna go to the IFLT or in TPRS?
Oh, there was just a TPRS training in Omaha. I through one of the companies, and I can't even remember now who the trainer was going to be. I would have liked to have gone to Denver or something too, but that just
Mm-hmm.
didn't work out.
I know what you mean. So, how did you guys go about finding your training programs that you were interested in or did?
Um, well, the first time I found it by accident. I had switched from elementary to high school, and so I was started teaching high school Spanish. And the first year was like first year of teaching all over again. And so that summer, I said I needed some training, and uh, I found a TPRS workshop, and it's changed a lot since then. That was many years ago. But then, yeah, I just hear it by word of mouth or in different publications. And then I was just lucky when I heard about it coming to Japan. And
So,
I
did
had
you,
heard before.
when you say different publications, Like, was it online publications?
There was one for the California Foreign Language Teachers, I think, Association, or they had made an announcement, or there was a flyer at the school, and I got to go to that one. Uh, I was just lucky it was close by. It was in LA, and I wasn't that far.
So through your local organization?
Yeah, through local organizations.
Yeah, because I've mostly been doing Google Food to try and find anything, and then I usually find it like 2 weeks after it's gone from my region. So
yeah, I was lucky through the Twitter though that a colleague in Singapore, I think it's Jeannie, yeah, she's she told me about the one in Hong Kong that's coming up in October, and I was like, yes, finally this hemisphere,
yeah,
another one.
Emily. Yeah, Jean's awesome. She did LangCamp last year, and she was in like all of the Skype sessions. But she's a little bit more limited with the travel plans this year. But yeah, she's a good one to connect with. Hey, Emily, do you have any training with comprehensible input and stuff like that? Or TPRS?
Just from stuff I've read.
Well, how'd you go about finding stuff to read?
I guess now I feel, tell me if this is a correct observation. Like, I didn't know CI was such a like acronym or something.
Yeah.
But I've been seeing it a lot lately, like it's almost a method, but I guess I thought that was always the goal of when you're teaching world language, or if you're teaching, English, anything. Same as in my ELL, with my ELLs, like comprehensible input.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's come to represent kind of a school of methods. It originated, like, it is more TCI than CI, is my understanding. Totally comprehensible input. Is that what the T's for? And it's kind of evolved out of the TPRS movement. I don't remember what the TPRS. I know that TPR was total physical response, and the S is storytelling.
Which I always get that. Well, the TPRS, all I can ever remember is the storytelling.
Yeah.
Yes,
right?
TPR is now, well, it used to be total physical response storytelling, and then it was changed to teaching reading through proficiency and storytelling, or teaching proficiency through reading and storytelling, my bad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because in TPRS, they push a lot with the reading, getting them reading, and you have to have the comprehensible input, and you use the story asking as a way of making it more comprehensible to the students.
Yeah. So, and then it evolved, and as TCI, totally comprehensible input, or total? I don't know. What's it?
I don't know what the T is for. I just saw that coming up now too. I was just guessing on the T. I'll have to ask someone the next time they use it. What's the T for?
I've asked Carol Gabb before, and I think Chrissy Placido, and I can't remember. But like they've started using CI instead of TPRS, and I've noticed that they're espousing a lot more things. Like, I used to feel like they were always talking about their books and their novels that they use for that, but now I feel they're talking about more ways to incorporate authentic resources and more ways to break anything down rather than just through the storytelling method. And so it's like it seems to be a group of strategies that they're expanding on.
And I think the reading part is like Bryce Hedstrom and some of the others, they really focus on the reading because we know that with reading the students can acquire more language, and that is the main goal behind the TPRS. But I think also it's the passion or the interest level, getting the kids interested in something. I think that's what's been so helpful with the novels. Because it does create an interest level amongst the students and helps them connect with the culture. And I think anytime you can find a resource that gets the kids connected and makes them want to learn more, then you've got them motivated. and I think they can connect with it better. So, you know, whatever methodology you use to get them there, I think is
So
great.
when you talk about the novels, are those the readers, those?
Yeah, I'm referring to
Usually they're like a one color and then the black title. Those?
No, I'm talking about well, I'm referring to the TPRS
Okay.
novels that you can find. Um, those are the small little novels that I'm referring to. Um, like, you know, gosh, what are they? Like the Nuevo Houdini. You might have heard of that one. There's quite a few out there.
That's the one I keep hearing about lately.
Yeah.
Yep. Like I used to hear about some about piratas and tumbas and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Is there one with Anna?
Pobre
Pobre
Anna.
Yeah.
Isn't that like an outdated one that people like make fun of now? I don't know.
That's what I think of when I think of I just have that picture in my head.
Yeah. Pobre Anna, it's yeah, you can read Pobre Anna. It's very comprehensible. Very comprehensible. The kids can read it at a very early stage. It's not going to be a favorite piece of literature, though.
So like it lacked the accessibility, the passion.
Yeah, it lacks some of the, but it's a great beginning reader, and you know the kids will like it just because I can read, you know, and that's kind of a nice, you know, first step. But then one that my students really liked was Esperanza, and the other one was Felipe Alou. Felipe Alou we did this year, and they really liked that one. It talks about the baseball player from the Dominican Republic going to the United States, and they really connected with that one. And then it talks about the United States in 1955, right at the beginning of the civil rights and his whole life. So it's really interesting.
You think you could put the titles into the notes or the chat thing on the side?
Pardon?
Could you type the titles into the chat or into our note page?
Sure.
That'd be good.
I ordered a novel for each level this year. I want to try teaching with them. I'm curious how you structure your lessons because I don't want to do too much each class period and overwhelm them, but I also don't want to spread it out too thin so that they get tired of the same old thing. Like I know some people say they do it like once a week or something. I feel like that spread the novel out too far. So how do you structure your lessons with those?
With the books, but with Felipe Alou, we did take our time, and I actually, because it was the first time I used the book, I used the teacher guide that you can purchase with it, and it was worth it. And you know, Carol's company, it's done a great job. So I used that, but then I mixed it up. Like I didn't use everything that was in the guide, and when I did some fun things with them as well, like hashtags. You know, they had to do like if they were doing a Pinterest, they had a picture that they had to draw out, and they did some hashtags. Whatever I could to get them talking about the story, and then looking up information, researching about that era or researching about a certain place. We did a Google tour builder to help them kind of get a perspective of where the Dominican Republic is, and I think in the first chapter, or it talks about where he's from in the Dominican Republic, near the Rio Aina, and so I went from Sasebo, Japan to Rio Aina in the Dominican Republic, and it shows them, and it just takes them from, like, I have a picture of the river here in Sasebo, and it just takes them literally from our map in the Google Maps and flies them across the globe and over into a river, and then we got to see some video or YouTube of that river during a storm. Anyway, it was a nice connection, and we got to talk about it. So you use the book to prompt to talk about a lot of different things, and you know, so it opens up that comprehensible input and connected. So it's not always just read the chapter, go on to the next chapter. Is that what you were
Yeah. Yeah.
So did you do like a chapter a week kind of thing, or what was your time frame like with it?
Yeah, some chapters I went through a little faster than others. She had a couple chapters where you could use she had a reader's theater, and instead of actually reading the chapter, we just read the reader's theater, and that was based off the chapter. Um, and we acted it out, and we practiced reading, and just it was actually a lot of fun because we got to move all the desks and chairs out of the way, and because we built the scene, and I had a group of them doing a choral reading of one section of it, and others were so you could put like 4 people could be one character, and it was great. They all had to read at the same time, so it was great practice with just reading out loud and getting the pronunciation down and there was a couple times when a few people were just reading it kind of like, yo hablo español, and the kids were like, no, that's horrible, don't do it that way, that's creepy, like, good, you got it, you have to put some accent in there. And the kids are like, okay, they put the effort into reading. But the kids really enjoyed it, and in fact, the rest of the time they kept making jokes about hamburguesa, and because he wants a hamburger, and he's never had a hamburger before. The main character in that particular story. So there was a lot of good things that came out of it, and and so I just kind of went through it little by little. I think one time after we did the reader's theater, we went back and read the whole chapter together, but they went through the chapter pretty quick. They're like, yeah, because they already knew what was coming up, and then there were other little bits of information. They're like, oh, that wasn't in the reader's theater. Okay, cool, but we got to talk about it. So what I liked about it is that it opens up discussion.
So do you do a lot of silent reading?
I didn't do as much silent reading as I probably should have or like to have done. The free voluntary reading, it's not my strong suit yet. Hopefully it'll come.
Well, like with these readers, is that how they silently, with these, not readers, but with these novels, or
they
TPRS. Read them silently? Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, I try to mix it up. We would read the novel in small sections, and as you're reading, you're supposed to kind of like ask as you go through, do the story asking while you're reading the novel, not just read the novel and then discuss, but to kind of do a little bit more, well, what do you think this means, and well, what does he mean by this, or why didn't he do that, what do you think, and try to build up on it, or is he going to this place or this place? And,
so do you read it out loud to them?
I did for like my level ones, and especially because I want them to hear the pronunciation.
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted to go slow enough, but sometimes they would tell me to go a little bit faster because I was reading too slow for them. Okay, fine. They knew the vocabulary well enough. But then if it was going to be really long, I'd try to let them have a little bit of time, or I'd say, okay, does anyone want to volunteer to read? Which usually they don't want to in level 1 because there's, pronunciation is still hard. But I had a couple that were like, yeah, I want to try it. And so they did a little bit, but I kept it short and sweet, to the point. And, sometimes, we would we'd read and discuss. Sometimes, if the paragraph was just a little bit more complex, I might just say, okay, now what does this mean in English? Let's go back. And it was a little simple translation, but maybe the sentence was just a little bit more complex, and I wanted to make sure that they understood what was going on. But most of the time we just read and discussed in Spanish.
So like they read along with you while you read aloud most of the time?
Yes. I had enough copies so that we could do that. But yeah, even at level 1s, you can't do it for very long. So sometimes if I saw they were just low on energy that day, we didn't finish the whole chapter, and the chapters are like sometimes just 3 pages long. It's not that they're not huge, but they're just exhausted. And so we just talked, and we moved on to something else within the book, or discussed something that the chapter brought up.
So you stayed focused around the book and the themes of the book for the whole unit. It wasn't like a bonus thing, like elementary kids get, oh, if you're really good, you can have story time kind of thing, or it
No,
was the
that
meat
was like
of everything.
that was a meat. It wasn't the central one. I can't remember what else we were doing at that time, because I didn't want to make it. I had some projects that were connected with it, and I can't remember off the top of my head what else I had connected with that particular unit at this moment. But we were reading it in January. So yeah, we had other things that we were doing at that time as well, some other projects that we were working on.
They weren't
And
necessarily connected to the books?
I think, I want to say it was connected, but I really can't think of what it was that we were doing along with it. But yeah, it was my first time with the book, so I don't know if I had a connected lesson to that one, or a connected project to that.
Is that usually your policy, though, to like keep it within the theme?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to have had it more connected. I think for next year I will have something a little bit more connected with it, because I want them to do more with the tour builder. I think I was trying to teach them some stuff with technology at the same time, and I think I was trying to use the tour builder and may have put too much on the plate at one time. But that's probably why I can't remember it. If it's not that memorable, maybe it wasn't that good. But yeah, this next time I want to do more with it. I think with Tour Builder, I'd like to, because he goes to several different locations within the United States. I'd like the kids to be going around to those different locations using Tour Builder.
So have you ever done anything with like the the Comprehensible Input or TPRS strategies without a novel? Like, because my interest, because I don't have any novels yet, and so I just wanted to do some like simple short story kind of things. Have you tried anything like that?
Yeah, I haven't. I'm not great at writing the stories myself, so I often try to look up and find the structures that I'm focusing on and see if there's some stories. It's better when you can have like a, how can I explain it? Like I have the books from TPRS Publishing, the student books, and they're good. There's some great stuff in there, and I sometimes will refer to those and use those when I'm wanting to work on a specific structure. But it's better when you have something that you can connect with. So like when you're doing like a PBL unit, if you already know what structures you're going to need to be working with that unit, then you could develop small stories to go along to help them to gain that proficiency with those structures while they're working on the unit.
And that was my plan.
Yeah, and that's what I'm working on actually now is for next year, is on all of my units. I want it to be where I have some story asking sessions and part of the whole PBL unit that provides the support and provides the main meaty structures that I want them to definitely get out of it, so that they can work within the project and not worry so much about the extraneous vocabulary, but what are the main things they need for communication. So I'm working on it. It's a work.
Like I've tried, is this anything related to, and after I asked this, if someone could explain story asking too, because I was confused on that. But in our family unit, I tried to make, like I had an index card with the specific vocabulary I wanted them to know, and then I told a story, tried. And I had the students come up, and then I was like, this is, so once they knew what sister meant, well, this is the sister of the uncle of somebody. So who is it? Oh, that's who it is. Or how are they related? Where did they go? Then this person, is that similar to any of this? Or
Yeah. Can I for family, like the TPRS one by Carol Gab or Gob?
I say Gab. I don't know.
Okay, Gab. One of her first stories in the level one is about family, and it's El Papá está enojado. I think it's Una familia rara, which the kids love learning rara, and then there's some other word, but there's like three main structures, and so you work on family, and you build with each story. You build about talking about the family, and eventually by the end of that unit, you're able to talk a little bit more about family, the dad, the mom, who is the father, who is the mother. I'm wanting to do that again this next year for my beginning, for my Spanish 1, but I want to also talk about who was in the family, because eventually by November I want them to be able to talk about Day of the Dead and to do some Calavera poems in Spanish, and then have a whole thing with the Day of the Dead. That's going to be my project-based learning unit. But I'm going to start off with some story asking and getting some TPS and work them into talking about their families, immediate family, and then talking about someone that they know of who has passed away. And so, that's, I don't know if, does that help? As far as the story asking, it's hard to explain it all in just one sentence.
I put a link in the chat to a post that Martina Bex did that really helped me start to grasp what to do. Like she picked out 3 target structures in it, and then did some practice sentences with it. And she picked out the variables. So if you look at the story itself, like the variables are like the characters' names, their actual ages, like the way they describe things and where they are. But like there's a repetition of those 3 structures throughout the story. And she says, I'm not sure if it's in that post or another one, that they get that they enjoy it because they get to choose some part of it, and they can do silly stuff. They can't do English, but they can do just whatever they want. Like this one, her original has Gru from Despicable Me in it, but they could change it up and they could name it something else. And like you would ask, what's his name, and then you follow up. Like you create a script, and then you have things where you ask a yes or no question. You ask like a wrong answer, and then and I can't remember. There's some kind of circular structure to it.
Mm-hmm. Right. You start off with a basic statement like el muchacho se llama Roberto. ¿Cómo se llama el muchacho? Le dice Roberto. And then you say, well, you can say el muchacho se llama Roberto. Sí. El muchacho se llama Maria. No. And oh yeah, and the oohs and ahs. Thank you, Emily. And you get the kids to respond.
What are oohs and ahs?
The oohs and ahs, when you make your first statement, like hay un muchacho que se llama Roberto, and the kids go oh, and then or oh, some type of response that they understand, and then you start with the asking, and you go hay un muchacho que se llama Roberto, and they should say sí. And this is the circling. You start off with the statement, then you go positive, then you can do negative, like hay un muchacho que se llama Paco, and they'll say no. And then you can say, hay un muchacho que se llama Roberto or Fernando, and they should say Roberto, and then you go on, okay, that's an either or question, and then you go back to, sí, hay un muchacho que se llama Roberto. So then you can kind of move on to the next thing. That's called circling. So you circle the statement. But you can move on and change the verb, and you can say, hay un muchacho que grita. Roberto? No. Hay un muchacho que se llama Roberto. He doesn't yell Roberto. So, I mean, there's just lots of different things. You can switch around with the verbs, and you can play with adjectives. The idea is to get them used to hearing that particular phrase over and over again, and use the repetition until they understand it really, really well.
And they seem to enjoy like the confident, like they feel more confident doing that, right?
They do. They actually learn. They hear it and they understand it. You're constantly going back, like with that particular beginning structure. You're usually teaching like there is, or you probably have there is down, or you're teaching se llama at that point, and you'll have that structure up on the board, and you're constantly pointing back to that structure and up on the board to show them, okay, and you have a picture, or if you want to have simple English translation so that they just quickly get it, you can point to it and you kind of pause. Or you have your question words up, like ¿cómo? Or for like how. ¿Cómo se llama el muchacho? And then they should respond, Roberto. Ah, sí, sí. And then you can circle around with, hay un muchacho or hay una mamá. And then at that point, they should be able to, go, hay un muchacho. Or they'll just say muchacha, because it's level 1. They usually just stick to one word responses.
What if you have native speakers in your class?
I usually start day 1. And I'll talk to the native speakers in Spanish and say, if you can understand everything that I'm saying now in Spanish, this is definitely not the class for you, because you need to be in a higher level, or you need to be in a different type of class. If you're lucky enough to, we don't have native speaker classes, but I always will evaluate the students, and I say, look, spend level 1 if you're a native speaker and you're fluent, you're going to be hitting your head against the wall because it's just not appropriate, which is a whole nother discussion. But yeah, you have to really work with your counseling and with your school and your administration and decide how you're going to handle having a native speaker class, or are you going to put them into a different program? Because there are so many other issues with native speakers.
Yeah. And I guess I teach at a smaller school, so there's one level we have 2 sections of. The rest is just one section, and a lot of times the classes are only offered once, so during the day. And so then it's, well, if they don't take Spanish, then they're not going to be taking, any kind of Spanish. So, and in one class, I think I had a half of the Spanish too last year. I had half for, I only had 12, but, so I guess this isn't a question for this hangout, but.
It sounds like the TPRS comprehensible improvement approach would not be applicable for them. But I, for one, that's when I would be like, all right, if they get bored with some review thing we were doing, all right, go do your Genius Hour, and they would go research and do that on their own. So that came in handy, having that to do that, because what mine ended up doing my last semester is if they were in Spanish 1, then I got the counselor to call it a mixed class and bump them up to Spanish 2, so they were getting evaluated by the higher standards, and so it was totally kosher to tell them to go do something else. So that's because they're in Spanish 2. So Amy's here. Amy's been politely listening and and joining us. Welcome, Amy. Amy, do you have any experience? I saw that you were going to do Piratas next year. Do you have any experience?
Can you guys hear me, first of all?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I just came back from the conference in Denver about basically TPRS CI conference. And so just my background a little bit is that I've basically been doing those kinds of things without knowing that they had a name for it, you know? So far as not the storytelling as much as PQA, which is personalized question and answers. Have you guys talked about that?
Mm-mm.
You haven't?
No.
Oh, please do.
Okay. I'm sorry?
Please do.
Oh, so I mean, it's basically like, I mean, I didn't know all the terminology behind it. I'm not an expert at it, but it's basically like, so you could do a story with like como se llama or whatever in it, and you should do that as well, potentially. But also just in class, like the first day you could say como te llamas, and then you could be like clase, como se llama. And the idea is like Cameron was saying, the repetition. So what they were saying at the conference was something doesn't really set in. It's not like in your you can't really acquire it until you've heard it around 70 times, which is why there's so much repetition, you know. So I mean, I think it depends on the level, and I would just say that a lot of the stuff that I was hearing, like CPRS and CI, especially works, and it's kind of targeted towards the lower levels. It's not like it can't work in the upper levels, but it's really to kind of start the year and people who are novices. So you can go from, you know, como se llama, whatever, to if you're talking about what you like, you would just have a conversation and be like, que te gusta? And then if there's a word that they don't even know how to say in Spanish, that's okay. You tell them how to say it, you write on the board, and then you go from those questions, you go deeper and deeper and deeper. So it's just like having a conversation, but about the kids, if that makes sense, is what I'm saying.
I feel like I did something like that at ACTFL. There was organic world languages, and like we all got in a big circle, and like the woman leading it, she was like te gustan tatuajes or something, and she'd be like, ¿Tienes tatuaje? Ah, yo tengo tatuaje. Mira el tatuaje, and like they go around and like everybody be like, ¿Te gusta tatuajes? ¿Te gustan tatuajes? No, no me gustan tatuajes. And kind of like that. Is it something like that? And like
totally, absolutely. And it sounds so basic, but it's the idea. And I would just do that naturally. You're just trying to have conversations with your kids, right? But I think this really brought home the idea of like focusing on certain structures, like tiene or te gusta or whatever it is, and like saying that as many times as you can, as long as the kids are still interested, and then going on. And like, I mean, I think so. Part of this conference is that we got to observe TPRS-CI teachers instructing kids in like Spanish 1 and 2 classes. And so I would really encourage you guys to like maybe Denver TPRS. So the whole Denver school system, like 70% of it only uses TPRS. And so there's lots of videos of these teachers using it effectively. And I think it is really one of those things that you have to see and use. Like, it's not something that you can just hear about once and be like, oh, I'm going to use that. You know, it takes a lot of effort and practice and thinking about how you personally would use it. Because as much as I like the novels and the stories, like, that's only like 20 or 30% of my curriculum. It's not like I only teach with that, you know. So I think the more you can see it, the more you're like, oh yeah, I do that and I could do it better by doing it this way, if that makes sense.
So this is probably one of the ways you can stay 90% in the target language then in your, right, through this at your low levels.
It's much easier to, I find it's easier to stay in the target language when I'm really focused on using the story asking or the TPRS, because you have to go slow and you focus on the vocabulary that they're working with and the structures, so you can keep it in the target language. It just takes time.
I think I saw a tweet from that conference, during the conference, that said something about if you're so bored you want to fall asleep or so bored something, you can't believe it, then you're doing it the right way as a teacher.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think
Oh yeah.
I don't remember who posted that, but it was like, yeah, I mean, you've said it so many times that you're like, oh my gosh, I can't say como te llamas, one more time. But keeping in mind, that's not, I mean, that's the teacher's point of view. That's not the student's point
Oh no, right.
of
That's
view. Right.
but in that you're so focused on those target structures and that you're just
Right.
repeating and stay in such a limited context.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole idea of this, especially at the beginning, is that it's 100% comprehensible for the kids. So it's not like you're saying these random words and they don't understand. They understand everything. And what I saw in the classes is that, everybody has a relationship with their class and how it's run and the expectations. So these teachers had like set up ways to check in with the kids. So I don't know if you guys can see, but if the kids would like make this motion and they don't even have to raise their hand or anything, they could just do it in their lap, being like, and that was just a signal that they were lost or they didn't understand something. So then the teachers would, stop and go back and explain it. And something that I really found interesting and that I really liked is that they'll just stop and do check-ins in English. So especially if you're introducing something new, those check-ins say, where are you guys? Can you understand 100% of what I'm saying? Give me a 1 through 5. Where are you? Do you understand me? And the kids, I mean, they were just very used to this, to being asked that, and it just kind of helped the flow. And sometimes kids would say, no, I don't know what that word is, or yeah, I know what that is. And so it was another way of just kind of checking them with the kids and making sure they were all on the same page.
Then is there something about, I saw some more tweets about using gestures to help explain the tenses of verbs or the moods when they're, maybe it was somebody had an idea and they were saying like if it was past. Do you guys?
Yeah.
Go ahead,
I use it in my classroom, especially with the Spanish, explaining the difference with imperfect and preterite, and or if it's past tense, it's present, it's right now, and then we'll do ahora, we'll use certain signs, but then like for imperfect, I'll make like a circle going forward because it's that imperfect time, and then if it's preterite, it's just that point in time, and that usually helps them to remember, oh yeah, it's a completed action, it's that point in time, and the kids will all be going like this, after a while, but it helps, especially for the kinesthetic learners. And then there's other kids that just sit there and look at me and go, okay, whatever.
I would say something that I saw when I was observing the teachers that was really cool, which, I mean, you've probably seen it to some degree in your class, but that the kids could, if they understood DNA, then they understood tenía. All he did was like a back, like in the past. And the kids could put it together, and the teacher would check in and go, what does that mean in English? And they'd be like, oh, had. And they would get it.
Yeah.
Like, because it's not that much of a difference between DNA and tenía. And so they would get it. And then they didn't understand tuvo, so he wrote it on the board and then just kept going. So you could just see their brains putting it together like amazingly quickly. It was just really impressive.
Do they retain it after that so that they can actually use it themselves? Because like I remember one of my methodology professors gave his whole big spiel in German. I took German in high school, a lot of good it did me, and I could understand everything she said, but then I could not reproduce it. And I could understand because of the context more than because of any words that I was acquiring. Like I was following along, but nothing was sinking in.
In my experience, especially with the level 1, you're going to recycle a lot of the previous things that you've taught in a story asking, and so I think the understanding is there first, and that's the comprehensible part. They understand a lot of it. They'll understand the difference between tenía and tiene, but then they'll go ahead and use the wrong tense when they're trying to speak. Uh, it takes time for that part, the speaking part or the reproducing part, to really to develop. Um, I think it comes faster using the story asking, and they do pick it up. It just takes more time. It won't happen with just one session. If you're expecting them to be able to retell the whole story at the end of the session, that's maybe your top student, but no, most of them, they need to hear it more. They need to go back over and hear more of the structure before they're able to really use it. They'll understand it. They have the comprehensible part. They can read it, and they've got it, and then they'll start using it little by little. But it takes time.
And I think like the idea of storytelling is, oh, you tell a story and then you move on. But that's what I had in my head before. But the idea is more like you tell a story in one class period, or however long you have, whatever you want to do, and then the next day you talk about, oh, what happened in the story, and then you can do 2 or 3 activities that reinforce those main structures in the story. So then by the end of the week, because they've heard these things over and over and over again, then they should be able to tell the story. And obviously not perfectly, they're going to mess up, but they do. And I just wanted to point out that as far as TPRS is concerned, they're officially a lot more concerned with the input and not about the output as much. So I think, like, for me, I want output, and I think my kids are capable of doing that. Obviously not perfectly, but I think you have to find that balance of, like, what are you okay with your kids, and what standards do you want to have, and what assessments do you want to have for your kids? Because they have really great ideas with TPRS, but it's not, like I said, it's not everything that I do in class, if that makes sense.
I think the emphasis has been shifting a little bit. Like, there are some really ardent TPRS fanatics, I guess, that support input, no output. But then I think it was Carol Gab herself who was saying, no, when they're doing the story asking, that's output. Like, when they answer your questions, they're producing output that is appropriate for their level. And that was kind of reassuring to me, because I've heard some people, there are a couple of people on the outskirts of the community who are like, no, they should not have to do any output until they're novice mid or novice high, and strikes me as a little counterproductive. But I don't think that's the official stance, really.
No, I think with the issue with the output and input came about was because so much of our traditional foreign language teaching focused on all these output activities and getting the kids to produce this and that before they're really able to, before they've had sufficient input. Making them do these conversations when they're just not ready for it yet. And I think that's where the issue came up, where people were realizing that we have to give them plenty of input, of that comprehensible input, before they're ready for the output. But output is important because they have to have that chance to produce to help them in the learning process of the language. Definitely, you're going to have that output. With the lower levels, it's one, 2 word or a small phrase, and then it builds just naturally.
Right. But like, rather than the output being, oh, I can like say complete sentences in the preterite and the imperfect and use them appropriate, it's like, I can answer these questions. Like, and it follows the proficiency level. So like, if they're novice low, then they do a couple words. If it's novice mid, then they can start to do some phrases. If it's novice high, then they start having like actual sentences. So I mean, I think the output might not be as emphasized, but I think it's an essential part from what I've observed more recently.
Yeah, and you can get the kids to focus on being able to say something at a novice high, even though it's still earlier in the year. If you've really worked a story well enough with them, and you've given them all the support, and they've heard it enough, and it's like been 5 days, I guess, you can get them to retell that story, and it sounds like almost like a novice high. Well, maybe your higher level students, they can sound pretty good within that context and within that area. But it's a building block. It's something that they're building a good foundation.
And that is something that, like, I really see with the ELLs that I work with. You know, it seems like they are understanding everything, and when I have conversations with them or when I do certain testing with them, it was so interesting when you, like, they might be able to say, oh yeah, I got my bike in the summer and I like to ride it a lot. But if you ask them more questions about the bike, this might not be making sense. They can't develop any more on that topic. Like, they have the memorized chunks or a few phrases that maybe they've told those stories multiple times to their friends or teachers at school. But so, but then how long do you stay in those limited contexts? Like, how can you get them stretching with their output?
And actually, I think a lot of it has to do with their level, because I don't know if it's an actual thing, but like my state in North Carolina, they have the three levels and the three proficiency qualifications. Like novice, they call parrots, and then in the intermediate they call them survivors. Like they could survive in the target culture, and then beyond that they're storytellers, the pre-advanced or whatever. So I think the expectation with the actual proficiency guidelines is they're basically parrots for the novice levels. So they can't come up with completely new things unless it's something they've heard and practiced before, I guess. Which it seems limiting to me. I would think they should be able to, at least in writing, to be able to pick things apart and like guess how to say things. But I guess if they've never had any exposure to how to say, I don't know, bike chain or something, they would probably be stuck. Trying to find the proficiency posters. They're pretty cute. Actually, I made a cuter one. But it breaks down the levels. Do this one. There's a new thing that I added here. Showcase. Let's see if this works. I don't even know what that is. Show item. I did a showcase of the posters that we have. I don't know what that is. Oh, let me do a screen share so you can see it. Just because. So here's the breakdown, like for alphabetic languages. Like the novice is a parrot, and that's like levels 1 and 2 for most things, and survivor, and then the storyteller.
Which is why I think just like storytelling and PQA and all that kind of stuff works so well for the novice levels, because that's basically what you're asking them to do. It's
right.
Make a complete sentence. And I saw that Emily wrote on the side something about correcting, and that was something that came up as like, when do you start correcting, and to what degree do you do it? And if you're not teaching like explicit grammar, then how do you point that out? And so kind of some things I took away from it were kids will naturally pick up on some grammar stuff, and then you can have TPRS does a lot of like pop-up grammar. So you stop what you're doing and you say, okay, I just said tango. How is that different from TNA? And all you say is like tango is for yo or for me, and then TNA is for you or two or whatever it is, and then you move on. So it's not like you drill it, but you do acknowledge it sometimes. And kids are allowed to stop and ask questions if it's grammar related, if they really want something explained, if it's quick. So it's just reminding kids every once in a while, but not correcting and not being precise. You just, any output, you're taking any output as opposed to correcting.
Do you stop and have them write down the grammar pop-up stuff? Because like if my kids don't have that reference, like even when we did the pop-up kind of things, we're like, oh, this is TNA. I say tango. I say tienes on Facebook, and they say see tango on Facebook, and we go around. Everybody does that. We practice that, but then they're still getting tango and tienes confused, and like if I don't have them write it down and have them refer to it visually,
Right.
I feel like they're lost. So is that included in the grammar pop-up model?
Yeah, and I think if that's the structure that you're working with, then you already have it on the board for them.
And I do.
Like this easy reference for them. Yeah. And
Like
so,
word wall style, or just like on the presentation for the day's lesson?
I'm sorry, what was the first thing you said?
Like word wall style, like it's always on the bulletin board kind of thing?
So what I was observing and what I'm going to try to do is, so if you have a unit that's like 2 weeks long or whatever, so you have your structures. So yeah, you would have it on the poster, on the board the whole time. They would be on there for constant reference. And then you're going to move on to other things. But it's not, so one of the things that like just was really powerful is that like language shouldn't be something that you're trying to hide or something that's a secret. Like if they want to know a word, give them that word. Like they're trying, which is why you should always have question words on the available for them, you know, as opposed to studying them and then quizzing them and oh you don't know it. It's like always have that there for them because it's going to encourage them to try and help them to understand. And so yeah, you know, at some point, yeah, sure, take it away at some point. But I don't know. There was just I just had a little bit of a mental switch of like have it available for them and let them use it as opposed to hiding it and saying why don't you know it? You know what I mean? Which tends to be the thing when you're like, oh, I've said tango 100 times. How do you not remember tango? You know?
Yeah. I in the past I did a grammar wall. I didn't do it this past year. I wish I would have. I regret it now, but I did a grammar wall, or not the grammar wall, but the word wall. As we did the structures, we learned structures through a story. I kept the structures up and just kept track of the structures that we had gone over. And I think I got the idea from I can't remember his name, the French teacher that does TPRS, and he talked about going over those structures just as a review at the beginning of the class, and what was, you know, what's this, oh yeah, okay, and then we move on with the story. So you've already reviewed what you've already gone over and what you've already learned, but it's again pointed out to the wall. And a couple of my students said that that was really helpful for them, having the words up there that we had already learned. And I didn't even have the English translation, I just had the words that we had gone over. And then they were like, oh, yeah, it's up there. We did that in that lesson, and that was the story about this. But it was a good visual reminder for them, and then they could recall it. So you can do that with the grammar pop-ups.
Yeah, that reminds me of a post-curricular class that I did like 2 years ago on, oh my gosh, I let them I translate some stuff in class. That goes, like, if they want to know a word, then I tell them, and you don't waste time playing charades and like you want the story to keep moving forward, you want the subject to keep the discussion keep moving forward, so yeah, just give it to them sometimes.
Yeah. I think that it's right. I think sometimes translation, it depends on the moment. And other times, yeah, you want them to do the charades and you want them to kind of struggle a little bit with it. And then there's other times you just got to make the call and go, okay, fine, this is a quick translation because we need to move on. There's a topic that's more important. You don't need to be hung up on one word.
Or sometimes you wish you had a video recording yourself of, do you ever imagine what you probably looked like? Like sometimes I'm doing something to try to get them to guess what the word is, and then you don't get it, and I'm like, what was I doing? I was dancing. It looked like you were running.
I do that. I record myself in class. I turn on the video camera. The kids are like, you have it on? I'm like, it's not about you guys. It's all about me. I said, I'm doing this for myself. And I go back and I watch my lessons. And I'm going, oh, man, yeah, I need to work on that. Or, oh, good, that worked. You know, and yeah. I've seen my facial expressions.
But I like that. Just giving them the word sometimes. Like, feel that it's okay. You can feel okay about that. Because sometimes, like, I don't want to break into... you know, English.
Yeah, you don't have to say the English. You can just write it up on the board. You know, you write the Spanish and you write the English really quick. and then you move on. Then you keep it in Spanish. They just got to see the English translation real quick.
Yeah, just take como se dice. Back in the day when I just did the TPR, like we would have our basic phrases, and I would take a picture of them doing the action that we decided on, and like we put that in a presentation and put it on the website, and they could review vocabulary and phrases that way. They got a kick out of that. It got to be time consuming after a while, but
Yeah.
if you just do it for some like the most basic things. Well, it is officially our time. Do you guys do you have any final thoughts before we conclude?
So, just Amy, if we look up Denver Public Schools TPRS, like I just Googled that before, but are there any specific people or?
Yeah. So Jason Pritt is. I actually didn't get to see him because he does elementary. And then there's a guy named Matt something, and then there's Joe. I don't know how to spell his last name, but basically they all work together, and they've come up with something called weiteachers.com. And I haven't. They have separate curriculum that you might be able to find if you Google it. I actually was talking to somebody there, and she showed it to me because she had it. But their website is a paid thing, so it's like $90 a year per teacher. And I don't endorse that because I haven't seen it. And you can see tons of free examples if you just Google TPRS and other stuff. So I would start there. But they basically, my understanding of their curriculum was teachers, because what I saw was teachers were given like units and just words or verbs, phrases, structures that they needed to cover, and that was it. And so teachers figured out how to do that. It was very much up to the teacher. And so these guys got together and like made curriculum for these structures and words. And so I don't know if it's worth paying for or not, but they do have that available. And it was just interesting to me that like 70% of the Denver Public Schools uses it. So, I mean, they don't have a textbook, they don't have that curriculum, it's just the structures. So it's kind of up to the teacher to do what they want with it. So it's a good place to start and search and see what they have with that. But I would say Martina Bax, I posted the link, and I heard somebody else, I think Garmin's did it as well, but she has some really awesome stuff and curriculum ideas, and I would start there, honestly, if you're interested in this stuff, because she has so many good ideas.
I bookmarked a few on our LangCamp Digo if you guys want to check that. And some of Martina's stuff and the Christy Positive thing. But Martina really breaks down the process. And so I'm starting with her mostly to do mine. Well, I need to get going. Do you guys have anything else real quick? Or we will have another session at 8 in the morning. I don't know if you guys want to come to that, but I think it's mostly for people who can't make the evening ones. So if you can't wake up, that's cool.
I got to go too.
All right.
Talk to you.
Adios.
Bye. It's nice meeting you all.